Starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
So I will open the Architecture Board review meeting of March 8th, 2021. First item on the agenda is roll call.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. This is Mary. I'll go ahead and take the roll call. We have Vice Chair Six,
Here.
Board Member Anderson,
Here.
Board Member Black,
Here.
Board Member Olson,
Here.
and Board Member Whalen,
Here.
and Chair Moore and Board Member Watkins are absent today, and we have a quorum. Thank you.
So next item is general business and public comment. Any member of the public may address the board for up to 2 minutes on any subject in the section that is not on this agenda for a public discussion. Is there anybody in the public that wishes to speak at this time?
Thank you, Vice Chair Six and members of the board. At this time, I don't see that anyone has logged into the webinar to speak on general public comment. Mary, have we received any written general public correspondence?
Thank you, Christina and Vice Chair Six. We did receive written general correspondence and it was distributed to the board before this meeting. Thank you.
All right, with that announcement, we will close the public general comment portion of the meeting and move on to approval of the minutes, I think, if the screen is correct. Yes, here we are. Approval of the minutes for the Architecture Board meeting of February 22nd. I have a motion thereof.
I move we accept the minutes as presented.
Second.
Mr. Olson and Mr. Black, I have a few comments. If we could scroll down to item 1, page 3. On motion number 3, the applicant show of the window headers, not hips. And then as motion number 1 is the applicant shall provide an in-progress review addressing at least the following items. Item 2 through 10 be A through H subheadings. Do you understand that, Mary?
Yes.
Okay, and then what's presently now item 9, it should say show proposed drills of the trash gates. And then if we move on to item 2, I don't know which page it is, motion number 3. Now this is a touchy one because Mr. Moore wasn't here, made the motion. And so I need very careful concurrence with everybody else that this was the intention. When it says that the board finds this particular design too modern for the location and requests that the aesthetics of the roof deck railing. I thought Mr. Moore's, Chairman Moore's intention was that both the deck and railing and the canopy above the whole structure of the roof was too modern. Is that not what we intended?
That is my recollection too, Vice Chair Six.
Everybody else agree with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I tried I tried to get hold of Kevin, but he wasn't available. So what I would suggest is that we just simply change the word deck to rooftop structure and to be restudied. Is that acceptable with everyone?
Yes,
Yes.
Yeah,
All right. Very good. With that, I think that we can, with those changes, I think we can vote on this, Mary.
approval of the second,
yeah, and second.
All
Right.
right. We have Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes,
Board Member Olson,
yes,
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Pardon the interruption. Thank you, board members. Just wanted to clarify that last correction to the minutes. We actually do have to rewatch the video and make sure that Chair Moore said those words and make sure that this correction was just a sort of a grammatical correction with human error as opposed to sort of changing the words. So we'll have to go through and just double check that.
Fully understood. And I assume if there is a problem, it'll be brought back to the board next meeting.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, thank you. All right, let's move on to approval of the consent calendar of March 8th, 2021. Can we have that in front of us?
move we accept as presented,
second.
All right, I have a motion on the floor. It's, are there any further discussions?
Vice Chair Six, I just wanted to, normally I think on the consent calendar, since you all haven't had a chance to review it in advance, this is the time that I would normally just read the motion just for the benefit of all of the board. The consent calendar today was reviewed by board members Black and Olson, and 101 South Cañada Street received final approval as submitted.
All right. Thank you for that correction. With that, we still have a motion on the floor. Is there further discussion? All right, Mary, can we take a vote?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair Six. We have Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes,
Board Member Olson,
yes,
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on, I think that next agenda item is any announcements, requests for continuance and withdrawals, tender appeals. Do we have any of those?
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. I have just the announcement that Chair Moore will not be in attendance at today's meeting, and I received advance notification of that.
All right, very good. And then subcommittee reports. The freeway subcommittee is working very fine and very encouraged with the way that the design team is involving the city representative. One of the things that has come up is that there's an opportunity to either incorporate or have standing art in the embedded in the bridges and structures or among the sides. So we need to I'm finding out who are the appropriate people to contact or to get involved in that, because it is a responsibility of the city team to get that instigated. So that'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Other than that, everything is going fine.
Yeah, I might add something to that,
Yeah.
Richard. So I sent a note to Megan, the staff person, just asking her to look into how the process was handled when they did the Milpas roundabout, and they had an art component associated with that. And I pointed out to her that I think that was handled through the Arts and Public Places or the Arts Commission with the county. And they had a whole process where they put out requests for submittals, and then there were submittals, and then there was review by a panel of judges, and that's how we ended up with David Shelton's corn stalks. Anyway, so I pointed out to her that there is a precedent for some kind of process with the city and public art, and that she may want to just review that, and perhaps there'll be some information there we can use for this project as well, the 101. So just want to point that out.
Thank you, Mayor Black. That makes me feel a lot more comfortable. I don't have experience with that, and that makes me feel better.
Good.
All right. Now moving on to our first agenda item.
Vice Chair Six.
Yes.
Last meeting, I had asked staff if they would investigate something about the Funk Zone murals as to whose authority they're erected under, and I was wondering if staff had any report.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six and Board Member Olson. We did actually have a chance to look at that Funk Zone art, mural project. It last came for an update to you guys in 2019. At that time, the ABR's purview was over the location of the murals. And I believe it was the Visual Arts and Public Places. I'm sorry, I could be getting the words a little bit mixed up. The most of the stuff is in paper copies at the city, and we're not really supposed to be going in and out of the office too much. So I was able to have a staff member retrieve that file and get some information on it. That project, though, needs an update. So for any new locations, we need to update that map and show where the new locations of new murals would be allowed to be located, and come back to ABR for you guys to review that.
Okay.
Do you expect that would happen next meeting, that you would bring that back to us?
I'm not sure what the timeline is. I certainly know that Tony Bauman, who's the planner on the project where this came up at Anacapa, is also working on that, and we're trying to come up with a game plan of how we'll be able to review that as well as the art, either at the same time or get better clarification on that.
It's my understanding that the Visual Art and Public Places Committee is no longer in existence, so that may complicate things.
Certainly, yes, but I believe the first part of is still true, which is the ABR definitely has purview over the locations of the murals. I think that was one of the things that slowed us down when we started researching this.
Thank you.
Because I think Board Member Olson has a good point. I think that we should have in the future some kind of, especially if the committee that was responsible in existence, we should kind of have a report and do what we have to do to sort this out.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six and Board Member Olson. Yes, that's the intention of city staff to do that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
And hopefully that could be done before final approval of 11 Anacapa, as it's that project is sensitive to this issue.
I guess that if we didn't have it before the final approval, we wouldn't be able to, we would have to eliminate the potential use of murals on that project.
Yeah. Yeah, well, let's hope we can get our arms around this soon. All right, if that's all discussion, we'll move on to the first applicant, who is 2700 Block De La Vina Street, project design and final approval. Proposal to replace the existing structurally deficient De La Vina Street Bridge over Mission Creek with a new bridge. The project includes the removal of the buildings located at 2726, 2733, and 2735 De La Vina Street. Installation, new street lighting, fencing, channel walls, and revegetation of Creek Bank. The project is here for project design and final approval. The project is compliance with the project compatibility analysis, urban design guidelines. The project was last reviewed on December 14, 2020. I see applicants are here. If they would please make their presentation. Oh, sorry. Yes, this is important. The last motion is here before us on screen. The board generally supports the design and direction of the project. The majority of the landscape design is effective as well as well designed. The board favors the type B railing system, which I think is the arch in the opening, providing additional tinted paved areas along the ends of the crosswalks, and it will be up to the discretion of the applicant to design the overall size of those paving areas. Provide a connection with the creek bed along Vernon Street. The site features provide a walkway along the landscape, although the proposed paving of the walkway is determined by the applicant, and provides a small planting area along the north of the bridge between crosswalks. I think that was directly in line with the Vernon alignment. So if you could, if the applicant on those items in your presentation, you'll get it.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, board members. Good afternoon. My name is Derek Bailey. I'm with the city's Public Works Department. Joining me is bridge designer Tom Conti and landscape architect Natira Jones, and we'll be presenting the changes in our design to respond to your comments. And with that, I'll turn it over to Tom to get us started.
Well, thank you, Derek. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tom Conti from Bengal Engineering. So this first sheet is a title sheet. There's really not much here to show you. I'm sure everyone has read every word on this sheet, so we could go to the next slide. Since we're seeking final design approval, some of these slides may be a little repetitious from December, but we're repeating it for the benefit of the public watching the meeting and any board members that might not have been here. So this slide shows the general location of the project on what we call Upper De La Vina. What it also shows is the historical context of the original 1916 Hollister Avenue Bridge, and then the bigger widening in 1926 as seen today. We see on this diagram well how the widening really affected the creek's path. Next slide, please. So this view gets a little more detail of the existing site. We can see the public bridge is about 70 feet from what we call back of sidewalk to back of walk, but the overall bridge width is a little bit over 110 feet wide. So it's a pretty wide structure. Next slide, please. So this shows a little bit of the underground complexity that we're dealing with on the project. There's only one small line on the upstream side of the bridge that's actually above ground. Everything you see here is pretty much below ground, and we're going to be directly impacting it. So next slide, please. Now on this slide, we're showing the project's main purpose, which is to replace the 105-year-old bridge. This shows the old shape and layout versus the new longer span to better accommodate Mission Creek. Note from the roadway delineation, the proposed configuration is accommodating bicyclists, pedestrians, and many vehicles on this busy street, just as it has today. So with that slide, I'm gonna hand it over to back over to Derek Bailey to show some of his nice exhibits that he prepared on the paver, color, context, location.
Thanks, Tom. Mr. Chair, in response to the comment to provide additional tinted paved areas along the ends of the crosswalk, we have studied the possible areas for tinting and have several options for your consideration. This slide shows possible tinted areas in buff colored pavers. Just stay there for a second so you can absorb that. And if we can go to the next slide, please. This just shows the same, those same areas with a red brick paver. Next slide, please. So buff colored pavers and red brick pavers are the most common color and materials used to pedestrian access ramps in Santa Barbara. This map shows where there are buff colored pavers in relation to the De La Vina Bridge and where there are red brick pavers in relation to the De La Vina Bridge. On Upper De La Vina Street, you can see the nearby intersections have buff colored pavers, and surrounding Cottage Hospital in the Oak Park neighborhood, the ramps all have red brick pavers. In the next 3 or 4 years, we're going to be doing some crosswalk projects along Upper De La Vina Street, kind of near the Cottage Rehab Hospital area. And so while those ramps have not been designed yet, there will be opportunities to use whatever materials the board thinks is appropriate. So just keep that in mind as you're selecting materials. We could be establishing a pattern for a corridor here. Next slide, please. This just shows some photographs of some buff colored pavers on Upper De La Vina Street, and the upper left is the crosswalk at Mackenzie Park near the new dog park. The large photo on the right-hand side, that's the intersection of De La Vina Street and Arden. So that's about 300 feet away from the De La Vina Bridge. So this is the nearest intersection. You can actually see the De La Vina Bridge location just in the background of that large photo on the right. And the buff colored pavers are placed in a herringbone pattern at a 45 degree to the sidewalk. Next slide, please. And this is an example of a ramp next to Cottage Hospital. This is the red brick paver, also in a herringbone pattern, but at a square to the sidewalk. Next slide, please. This is just a construction detail that would be used to place the pavers. Next slide, please. Great. So this is the same slide that you've seen in the last presentation, just showing vegetation removal that will be impacted by deep vegetation or deep excavation, excuse me. Natira Jones, our landscape architect, will be addressing the landscape plan in the coming slides. Next slide. Mr. Chair, at the last meeting, we were asked to provide a walkway through the landscaping area along the Vernon frontage. We consulted with the Creeks Division and the Police Department about this idea, and neither of them were supportive, both for similar reasons. I'm just going to read a short letter from the Creeks Division, just explaining their position. The area is a current hotspot for encampments, trash, human waste, and other debris. A short dead-end trail will create a convenient place for camping, loitering, and other misuse. We have had experience on other projects where similar trails adjacent to creeks have created camping, human waste, and trash issues. And the police had the same perspective as that. Excellent public views of the creek will be available from the sidewalks on the bridge, and the sidewalks are being widened as part of this project. The trail will occupy valuable space for installing native plants and trees. The creek bank area available for planting is already very limited in size. For the reductions in the planting area will reduce the wildlife habitat and water quality benefits of this small open space. And finally, the trail will invite new informal use trails down to the creek banks, and this can lead to erosion, destruction of plantings, and access to additional camping areas under the bridge. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Natira. Is she with us?
Thank you. Ms. Jones, we can't hear you.
Hi, can you hear me now?
Yes, thank you.
So as you can see on the landscape plan, we've added the enhanced paving on either side of the walkway at the crosswalks. This is on the north side, on sheet L1, and then on the south side, we can skip ahead to the next sheet. You can see the enhanced paving on either side of the walkway. We've also added a planting strip to address comment number 6 on the north side of De La Vina with low maintenance plantings. And Derek addressed why we cannot have a new path or an overlook on the south side. It just won't work with the site, the constraints, and safety and maintenance. And that's all for mine.
Thank you, Tira. Here's a couple other slides showing some of the photos of the landscape selection of the species. So this was showed last time, so we could flip through these and go to this next rendering. So since there was no comments in December on some of the proposed city standard streetlights, fencing, and channel wall texture color, these slides were removed out of respect for the board's time unless the board has specific questions later on. So this slide here shows the similar slide that we showed last time, the creek view render looking up at the bridge. Next slide, please. And now we show the street view rendering that was altered a little bit from our last presentation. You can see that enhanced crosswalk pavers in locations described on the other sheets, and then also that landscape parkway strip that was placed on the upstream northerly side of the bridge. And with that, that's the end of our presentation.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you for the thorough presentation. So with that, we will open public comment. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak on this item? If so, go ahead, Christina.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. I don't see that anybody has logged into the webinar to speak on this item at this time. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence for this item?
Thank you, Christina, and Vice Chair Six. We have not received any written correspondence for this item.
All right, thank you. So I will get back to the board for questions. Should anybody have, and if the applicants would turn their screens off and the board members come back up, appreciate it. So are there any questions on this item?
I have a question.
Yes. Board Member Black.
So can we go back to the landscape plans, both on the north and south side? Yeah. So I was curious as to why, just enlarge it, why this area to the, I'm going to call it south, where the limit of work sign is, why there aren't trees in that area, just shrubs. And then I noticed the same condition exists across the street where it's just shrubs. And I'm just wondering why we couldn't put more trees in that space, unless there's some reason why.
Yeah, thank you, David. I can answer that question because that's the locations where we're doing some subsurface stormwater mitigation for our stormwater improvement. So the chambers the underground chambers that we're proposing to put in that meet the needs of the project would the trees would interfere with them.
I see. And is that on both sides of De La Vina?
Correct. This area on the, in the overall package, you'll see the overall tributary area of the drainage that feeds to this area is, it's quite large.
I see. I had another question. Is there an irrigation plan associated with this project?
Not yet.
Okay. Because I guess technically, in my mind, in order to get final, you probably want to have that plan. To me, it's not that critical, but the question always comes up: where's your backflow preventer going to be? Is it properly screened? Is it caged? You know, those questions will come up from an aesthetic perspective. So I'm going to want to see that. So I have no other questions.
All
Oh,
right.
I'm sorry. I have one other question.
Yes.
The wall treatment on the creek walls. I see you're using a form liner. I understand that. Is the cap going to be real stone or is it a formed concrete stone? What is it?
We're proposing real sandstone.
Okay, not unlike what's been done in other projects in town. Yes.
Yeah, I prefer the real sandstone cap. I think it finishes nice, so that's why we're selecting it.
I understand. Thank you. Those are my questions.
All right. Thank you, Board Member Black. Anybody else? If not, I have one question to one of the plans that show the paver plan. One of the site plan. The actual, yeah, there you go. I was just curious, you know, there seems to be both the fan-shaped drop to the street from the sidewalk and then a straight configuration. I would guess that's a increasing vertical curve in height. What's the logic there? It seems random.
Yeah, I think this is something we're going to look into a little bit more. The idea is for, I think you're referring to the vertical curve versus the wing for the ramps.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think this is something we're going to look into a little bit more. But we selected it just on the bridge with the wings because someone could actually, you know, walk down the wing, and we didn't want to have, you know, someone step off of a vertical curve.
Yeah.
Versus where on the other intersection crosswalk, we're channelizing people kind of with a path of travel, you know, going up Vernon and then, you know, turning directly on. So into the sidewalk or into the crosswalk, excuse me.
Yeah, it just seems, well, that's, so I understand the response. So thank you. So we'll go, if that's the end of the questions, we'll go to comments from the board. Is anybody ready to start?
No comments.
All right.
Yeah, I have no additional comments.
I have no comments.
All right. I think that, Lauren, do you, Board Member Anderson, do you have any comments?
No, I guess I would just prefer the sandstone pavers, I think.
All right, very good. So,
Pardon
go ahead.
Pardon the interruption, Vice Chair Six. Just wanted to confirm that Board Member Anderson had the opportunity to review the minutes from the last time this was seen at the board, since it was before she was officially installed as an ABR member.
Yes, I did.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. So I think my own comments are that that the buff color seems to be the opportunity to have it consistently up and down De La Vina. And the red around the hospital is a different beast. So I think the buff color is a no-brainer. And I would think that the fan-shaped approaches down the curb ramps would be preferred because of the tripping hazards and so forth. So I'd like to see a little bit of study on that, to see if all of them can't be fan-shaped. And I would suggest that the reasonable request for the irrigation be a something that we could do on consent. We could give, I think we could then, therefore, if it's okay with the applicant and their timeline, to give project design approval today with a final, with on consent for the irrigation plan. That sound reasonable?
Yes.
Okay, very good. So would anybody like to make a motion here?
I can make that motion.
Motion, Mr.
Oh, I didn't hear what you said, Vice Chair Six.
Could you make a motion in full?
Yes. I move to approve the project for design approval and final approval with the comment that, or condition that the landscape plan, which would include the irrigation plan, be presented at the consent, next consent, an appropriate consent meeting. And I'm open if someone would like to add anything to that motion.
Okay. Would you have the preference for the colored pavers?
And the color paver, the pavers be buff colored.
Does anybody have concern about whether these curb ramps are fan-shaped or straight away?
No, I don't. For clarification purposes, Vice Chair Six, are we granting final approval now? I thought you mentioned coming back on consent for final. Which one is it?
Board member, I think it'd be more proper to give PDA today and on final on consent, which was okay with the presenter applicant.
Okay, I drop off my final approval, part of the motion.
And I'll second the motion, by the way.
The final approval, with the understanding final approval will come back to consent.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, so I think we, Mary, if we could read back our motion.
So I should read the project compatibility criteria.
Excuse me, yes.
The project is in compliance with the city charter and the municipal code. It is consistent with the design guidelines. The project is compatible with the architectural character of the city and the neighborhood. The project is appropriate size, mass, bulk, height, and scale. The project is sensitive to the adjacent landmarks and historic resources. The project has, has appropriate public views of the ocean and the mountains, and the use of open space and landscaping is appropriate.
All right, there we have our motion. Mary, do you want to read back that?
Sure, I can go ahead and read it back. So the motion was for project design approval and it's continued indefinitely to consent with the following comments. Number one, the landscape plan shall include the irrigation plan and it will be presented at the next consent meeting. Number two, the paver shall be buff colored. And number three, the project compatibility analysis criteria were generally met.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, I think we have a finished motion on the screen, not the floor, on the screen. So can we take our vote?
All right, we have Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Black,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes,
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, thank you. The motion carries.
Thank you. We'll move on to number two. Oh, excuse me. So the project design approval is a appealable decision and can be appealed within 10 days of this date. Moving on to item number 2, 1911 De La Vina Street, project design approval. Proposal for a mixed-use remodel. Project entails modeling multiple facades of an existing 5,535 square foot, one-story non-residential structure. Also proposed is the internal configuration of the structure from office and laundromat space to an art studio and laundromat. Project proposes site improvements and a parking lot and vehicular circulation improvements. An accessory dwelling unit will be permitted under a separate permit above a 6-vehicle tandem carport. Under separate permit. It's not part of this review. Scope of work also entails landscaping improvements. No change to the existing single unit residence is proposed. Today, we're asking, the applicant is asking for project design approval. The project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis and the urban design guidelines, the outdoor lighting design guidelines. The project was last reviewed on February 8th, 2001.
Acting Chair Six, we're a little bit ahead of our schedule.
Oh, yes. Are we in time or do we need to take a break?
Thank you, Vice Chair Six and members of the ABR. Yes, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. Normally it would be sort of okay because we do have a 15-minute, but the applicant isn't here. So perhaps I can get a hold of the applicant, maybe if we can have a short recess.
Okay, so shall we do 10 minutes or 15?
Any applicants want to send me a message to say how much time you'll need? Sorry, I haven't had a chance to reach the applicant. Let's go with 5 minutes.
5 minutes, okay. Very good, we'll check back, we'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
Okay.
March 8th. And go to item 2, 1911 De La Vina Street, project design approval requested. Proposal for a mixed-use remodel. Project entails remodeling multiple facades of a 5,535 square foot, one-story non-residential structure. Also proposed is the internal reconfiguration of the structure from office to laundromat space to an art studio and laundromat. Project proposes site improvements and a parking lot and vehicular circulation improvements. An accessory dwelling unit will be permitted under a separate permit above a new 6-vehicle tandem carport. Scope of the work also entails landscaping improvements. No change to the single unit residence is proposed. The applicant is requesting project design approval. The project requires compliance with the project compatibility analysis and the urban design guidelines and the outdoor lighting design guidelines. The project was last reviewed on February 8th, 2002. So if we would, yes, so our comments from last time were study the continued development of the entry element to approximate materials and imagery commonly associated with the Spanish colonial revival with a modern take on those elements. 2, the approval to be conditioned upon inclusion of a street tree located in the right-of-way. Type and location shall be in consultation with the city arborist. So with those comments, we have our applicant here. If you would like to make your presentation and especially mention those, address those comments previous.
Pardon me, Vice Chair Six. I just wanted to give a brief staff overview of what's happening with this project. The applicant did go through the land development team and get a completeness determination. So we are looking for an appealable decision at today's meeting. If you guys can't come to an appealable decision at today's meeting, it can be continued to 2 weeks and still meet the Permit Streamlining Act. So I wanted to talk about that. The other thing I wanted to talk about was last time it was under discussion with the ABR whether or not they had the authority to request a street tree. And Mr. Bolton, thank you. This is from your ABR design guidelines. And if we look at letter E under street trees, it says street trees should be incorporated into a project when none exist and or locations recommended by the ABR or city arborist and the street tree master plan. So you guys were in agreement with your own guidelines in making that street tree request. The applicant did reach out to the urban forest superintendent Nathan Slack per the board's direction. We looked at the location of the property and determined that there was not adequate space to plant new street trees there. He was in concurrence with the board in terms of that he would have loved to see a tree there as the board would also have loved to have seen, but because of the utilities, and it doesn't make any good practical sense to plant a street tree there. So just following up on those items from the previous meeting.
All right, thank you, Ms. McGuire. So with that, would the applicant like to make his presentation? Mr. Holliday?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Vice Chair Six and members of the board. My name is Michael Holliday. We are the architects for the project with DMHA. Courtney Miller is also here representing the landscape architect teams. We'll both cover the issues. Hopefully the project is still sort of fresh in your mind. From a few weeks ago, we've made refinements as requested by the board, and I just sort of want to walk you through what those have been. And as you may recall, what we had tried to do last time was sort of unify this building, which has sort of a very pseudo-Mediterranean facade on it, where probably 80% of the rest of the building was really a kind of a modernist box from the rear. And so what we had suggested last time was we had some elements that found their way out onto the facade that the board took exception with, but the goal was the same, trying to tie the building together so it was sort of integrated as one whole. What we've done in the scheme that we're going to present to you now is kind of flip-flopped it. So we've, instead of letting the sort of modernist elements punch their way out into the facade with the kind of Cor-Ten steel casing elements and so forth, we've wrapped the traditional elements back on the backside of the building. So we still see it as sort of a unifying of the project architecture, but just in a different manner. And hopefully the board agrees and supports the solution because it's exactly what you've asked for. Nothing has really changed the project scope. If you could just zoom in a little bit, this perspective sketch sort of shows it probably better than almost anything else. What we've done is everything in the mass bulk and scale is exactly what we showed you before. We've done a little sort of minimalist reveal around the front entry. Signage obviously is going to be something that's going to need to be permitted by itself. We also got the board took exception to some of the steel elements that we were trying to sort of celebrate. So we've gotten rid of those and are going to integrate a little bollard solution right there on the corner, which is very traditional. There's, you know, examples all over Santa Barbara where sort of the corner bollard becomes kind of a part of the poured concrete element that will be, you know, I don't know if that's going to be plastered over, but we want to see it integrated into the building architecture so that it doesn't become a separate element. The other thing that's changed is the planter on the left-hand side was initially a Cor-Ten steel rusted element. So that's now a plaster planter. It's going to be a CMU and actually it's probably going to be poured in place concrete, but plastered over with a smooth steel trowel painted finish to match the building. And we've got some light fixtures that we want to show you. And so the front of the building's been sort of retooled to eliminate the modernist elements, which were going to be in the steel's also been removed. So it's just a plaster wrapped, and we kind of like the way that the front entry's been celebrated to differentiate it from the other glazing element. So let's go on to the next page, and we can kind of walk you through. I don't need to go into all the go-ons. Yeah, we don't. There's the existing condition, which, as we mentioned, very awkward, sort of strange context is sort of a mixed bag, but we're completely transforming the existing building. Let's go to the next slide, please. It gives you a sense for some of the elements there that again are not changing on site, and some of the context photos. Next slide, please. This is the survey. We don't need to go into any more detail here. Next image, please. Yeah, so all of this nothing has really changed since we presented it to you a few weeks ago. Let's go to the next drawing. This just shows the circulation. So again, the only thing that we've done is retooled the aesthetics of the sort of two front entries. If you look, one of the things that it was kind of interesting that we realized was we were trying to unify the building, and what we've done is the front facade and the mid-level facade. I don't know if you can scroll back or have a pointer, it's going to be the front entrance to the building, which is going to take on the same character. So like I said, we sort of flip-flopped the imagery. Let's go to next slide, please. Yeah, same path of travel. I think you guys understand what we're doing, accessible parking, providing ADA compliant means of access. Let's go to the next slide. This is the landscape slide. Let's zoom into that bottom image a little bit, and I want to give Courtney plenty of time to talk about what we're doing here. But this is pretty much what we presented before. We're dealing with the stormwater management plan issues, really recycling and repurposing this old existing sort of odd site that's had a whole bunch of uses over time. But the wraparound planter that runs along the front, we thought was going to be a nice element to tie this whole building together without really having to do much to the building architecture. Let's go to the next slide. And we go beyond this. We can come back to these during your time. This just shows the floor plan, and it's an art gallery. So we really like the idea of sort of a contemporary, what they do is produce contemporary art, most of it. Some of it's more traditional, but the interior is going to be completely transformed as an art gallery space. And you can see the building has no sense of entry right now. So the the sort of corner element, and then the little portal element on the side is going to be the primary entrance to the office space. Yeah, right there, through there. Let's go to the next slide. This is the existing building, pretty nondescript. Don't need to show too much about it. We've got photos, sort of it is what it is. But the next slide we wanted to show is what we're doing. And yeah, this is a refinement on what we showed you last time. But let's go to the next image because that's the color one we put sort of the time into. Well, not that, actually, it's the one right after this one. Yeah, this, if we can zoom in to, yeah, both of these. This kind of shows you the character and scale, I think, that the board was looking for. If we could zoom in on the lower elevation a little bit, I'd like to show kind of how we basically eliminated the contemporary elements that we were introducing around which were the steel, essentially, at those openings, and still keeping the smooth steel trowel painted plaster. We'd love to go with integral color, but vandalism is a problem down in that area, so we're just going to go with a off-white painted color. The planter, as I mentioned in front, is going to be plaster, so the whole building's gotten much simpler. Let's go to the other side elevation up above there. And this just shows how we've tied the whole building together. So we've left all the other elements similar, but wrapped instead of that being board form concrete, which was going to be an integral color concrete planter, that'll be plaster that sort of ties acts almost like a plinth across the bottom there. And then that's going, the same details, if we can kind of zoom in a little bit on the slingshot space, yeah, there gives you a sense for how the building's going to sort of all hang together. And, you know, it's just got a different feel than what we showed you a couple of weeks ago to respond to the comments. We can zoom out and then talk a little. I want to talk about the colors and materials before we get too far. Let's go to the next slide. This is the essentially most of the building now is the Benjamin Moore, the white dove, the color down on the lower light. The other colors we've left to be the same, sort of playing backdrop, but also complementing the white on white. That west elevation just gets blasted by the sun. So they really wanted to have some warmth and some dark, you know, a little bit of contrasting color. There's the other steel trellis elements. They are what they are. The client really didn't want to change those. They're the minimalist, cleanest, simplest trellis, but it'll still tie together, we think, with the traditional element. The light fixtures have been revised to be a much more decorative fixture that's going to be, you know, appropriate for this style of building. And the only place we left the corrugated metal color was on the rooftop enclosures and the fencing that's wrapping around the back. It's sort of the least expensive, cleanest solution, and they didn't really want to go with anything that was going to be more high maintenance or high cost or additional cost. All the glazing is a Selexia, sort of a light greenish tint to it with a clear anodized finish. And again, we tried to keep the back of the building just a simple, clean, a little bit more modern feeling without transforming everything. All the window mullions right now are clear finished anodized aluminum. So we're kind of sticking with that and kind of wrap this traditional facade across the front and the west elevation. And is that the last image? Not sure if there's anything after that.
You want to give your, Mr. Holiday, you want to give your landscaper
yeah, the next 5 minutes here, I'll give, we can go back to the landscape drawing and let Courtney Miller, our landscape architect, present a little bit more about what we're doing on the site and with the plant material selections.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Michael. Vice Chair Six, thanks for chiming in there and giving me some time. It's good to be here again. I'm glad to have 5 minutes, although I don't think I need it. So as Michael mentioned, we haven't changed much, you know, with this plan that you see here today since the last time you saw us. We did, as staff mentioned, coordinate with the city's urban forest superintendent regarding the request for a street tree. And he said that there was an adequate space. As we mentioned, there's a lot of underground utilities and overhead lines. So what you see here, like I said, is largely what we presented previously. And if Mr. Bolton could shift the page, I can show you the materials in the upper left-hand side of this page. So could you zoom in there? So this represents our plant palette. As you can see, we're looking for sort of a very textural, mostly green palette in the plant material. We're happy we were able to fit some canopy trees in this space. As Michael mentioned, right now it's very utilitarian, lots of asphalt, not a lot of plants, no shade, other than, you know, what exists from the existing trees. And so this will be a vast improvement. And then we are implementing some permeable pavers and decorative concrete pavers. So you see those on the bottom row. We have, I think that's a Stepstone product on the left, and we're looking at a gray color for that. And then the image in the middle is just a Holland, 4x8. This is a Pacific Interlock paver where the paver itself is permeable rather than the voids between, so you don't have that like loose gravel kind of spilling around the planters. I'm sorry, the pavers. And then the wood deck, just looking at EPay for that. So Mr. Bolton, if you could zoom in on the plan again, and I can just see if there's anything I missed. So yeah, I think the only other thing I would mention is we have these really nice vines that will grow up onto the trellis that kind of cover over the walkway along the north side of the building there. So that'll be a really beautiful element that helps address that building elevation. And then some fun elements too, like the crosswalk we've indicated is turquoise, but I'm not sure that's going to be the exact color, but we really wanted to kind of play off of the branding of the tenant that's going in that back space and introduce some more fun elements into the design as well to connect that existing one-story building with the commercial building. So I believe that covers it. The second page following this is just our tree protection plan, which I can run through quickly, but we have a big canary palm that's along the alley in the back, and a Washingtonia, which is around the middle of the property. We're keeping both of those. And then there's some less significant specimen. I think there's a ficus and maybe a pepper that we're removing, but I'm happy to answer questions about that if there are any. And I believe that concludes my part of the presentation. I don't know if Michael has anything else to add. Thank you.
No, thank you, Courtney. We're just here for project design approval. So hopefully we've incorporated all the comments and details and changes that the board requested, and looking forward to an approval today. So we're available for questions. Thank you.
All right, thank you for a thorough and good presentation graphically and complete. So with that, we'll open the meeting to public comment. If Ms. would give directions for people who like to speak on this project.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. I do see somebody from the member of the public has logged into the webinar. Just want to give them a moment to hit the hand button if they would like to speak on this item. Mary, have we received any written public correspondence on this item?
Thank you, Christina. We have not received any written correspondence for this item. Thank you.
Thank you. It appears that the member of the public has raised their hand. Mr. Froling, I'm going to unmute you, and you will have 2 minutes to speak on the item. You'll have to unmute yourself, and then you'll have 2 minutes to speak on this item. Thank you.
Okay, am I unmuted now? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, Mr. Froling, we can hear you.
Thank you. Thank you, board, for your time today, and I am speaking in favor of the project. This applicant's making one of the most significant investments that I know of in this corridor, very favorable lease terms. So the applicant's taking the high road, which triggers what are often cost prohibitive conditions. So much work, management, on and on. And it's really not a great real estate return, but the city and the neighborhood get a beautiful property out of this. I am concerned that the application of this nature that's taken, the time that it's taken in the city sends a message to other owners, considering the level of renovation when they look at their properties and things they want to do, and the message is to avoid this because it's just such a long, arduous, costly process. So that said, the applicant has listened to your comments. I've watched this project. They've made changes. It's very tasteful. And I think in that neighborhood, there were comments about Spanish. I mean, if you do look at the metal bagel shop and Durf's and the wooden patio and Mission Audio and Old Market and the 70s apartment building next door, the Fielding Institute, Craftsman Homes that are offices and homes, Lewis Plumbing, which is just a box. It's a very eclectic little market. But this will be the shining star from a standpoint of the investment being made in this property. It's very uncommon to have anyone spend this amount of money. And so I think it's really a gift to the city. So thank you for listening. The applicants made a lot of changes and been in this process a long time, and I would just ask for your full approval. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. So is Ms. McGuire, is there anybody else?
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. At this time, I don't see any other members of the public that have logged into the webinar to speak on this item.
Okay, with that, I will close the public comment portion of the meeting and bring it back to questions board. If the board members would put their self screen again. Thank you. So does anybody have any questions on this? I have a couple questions. So, Mr. You mentioned that you had a traditional light fixture. I didn't see much on the material board of that. Will that come later with final? I see it indicated on the renderings, but not on the material board.
Yes, Vice Chair Six, members of the board. We're not quite sure exactly what that light fixture is going to be. Since we're here for preliminary, we realize that getting that exact fixture is something we just haven't been able to select. The towards the back, those little clear, the smaller fixtures we were able to find that sort of fit that back area. The light fixture on the front, we'd like to see something like what we've got in the drawing there, but we just haven't been able to find sort of that right fixture. So that's, you know, that signature fixture, and then the two fixtures kind of on the portal element that's the entrance to Slingshot. We want to, you know, come back to you with the exact selection of fixture that is most appropriate. So
Okay.
It's still in process.
All right, thank you. I noticed your note, and I fully appreciate the Forest Superintendent talking about no room for trees. Is there an opportunity to put a tree in the on the property in the patio or laundry patio area? I noticed there's some kind of stump or if we go to the site plan, there's a blue square in the down sheet of the, yeah, you can see right here. Yeah, what is that crossed out square there?
Yeah, that's just an umbrella and a table and chair. There's really, really limited space out there. Matter of fact, you can see that's just an 8-foot umbrella. So any tree would be rubbing up against the face of the building. So I don't think there's any opportunity to do anything on site. We did go out and look on site, and unfortunately there's gas meters. There's a whole cadre of gas meters and stormwater utility lines all in the public area off there. So we kind of felt like having the umbrella, we think we can get that out there without rubbing against the building, and it'll add sort of a nice animated street front pedestrian scale character. But there just wasn't enough room there to introduce a landscape element of any significance. And plus, we like the idea of a color element, maybe like it'd be an FF&E item, but it'd be and actually that's what they have out there right now. They have tables and chairs. And in the wintertime, they don't want the shade. So it might be kind of one of those things that's set up in the summertime where you got an umbrella, and then the wintertime it's just tables and chairs. You take the umbrella down because of rain. So that's what that is, Chair 6.
And then, are you intending to keep, I think I see it referenced on your colored rendering, but are you keeping the stone veneer on that segment of the laundry walk along?
No, the stone veneer is actually getting plastered over. We thought about, it's not worth saving. So we're plastering over that, and we're just going to paint it out that sort of yellow ochre color. So it'll add a little bit of color. Again, that's as the building becomes a little bit more modern towards the rear. We're trying to, strike that right balance of a little bit of color, a little bit of warmth, and yet losing sort of the oldie goldie stone there that's just not worth saving.
Yes. And kind of tying into that, I noticed on the photos, there's a lot of paraphernalia, utility, little minor security lights and utilities and vertical piping and, all kinds of old doodads. I assume that your final working drawings will remove all of that and clean it up.
Yes, Chair 6, members of the board, that's the intent. We're trying to clean everything up and just make it, presentable. It's pretty industrial and nothing's been done there for decades. So everything is pretty institutional at this point.
Right. And then the limits of your corrugated metal fence, I see that that will be a portion of the upsheet property line, correct? And that's the extent of it?
That's correct. If we go actually look on a couple of those elevations, I think we've identified that. Yeah. So the fencing is going to be really a dramatic improvement to the site. Right now it's dilapidated wood fencing. This shows it from the other property line. So that this is wrapping around again on the adjacent side. It's going to be removing the old dilapidated fencing and putting up this corrugated rust colored metal fence around the back. Sort of the most, cost effective and consistent material. And that same material is what's up on the screening the rooftop equipment.
So my question is, I kind of see it indicated here on the hardline drawing, but you will have some kind of railing top and bottom, so you won't have the corrugated material just flying free where it would get bent and dog-eared and look unsightly in short order, correct?
Yes, that's correct. We need to develop the detail for that, but the goal would be that there's some sort of a top cap and a bottom cap, and the steel floats inside of that. So we can come back to you with that detail when we get into the final approval.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Those are my questions. So that will go to comments. Anybody want to start here?
Can I ask one more question, Vice Chair 6?
Mr. Black.
Please, thank you. Can we go back to the I guess the cover sheet with the rendering of the structure in the front there? More of the, okay. So I was just curious about the glazing in that little patio area. Could you describe that for me? Are there doors there, or is there fixed windows? What's going on there?
Yes.
Street.
Yes, Board Member Black. We might want to look at the existing condition. We're essentially replacing the existing windows that are in that condition. I mean, see what it goes all the way, you know, we can zoom in there. You know, it's existing aluminum windows which are being replaced. So it's all consistent glazing, consistent detailing all the way back around. Same thing with the doors that are being replaced. And so it's just we're infilling the existing opening, not moving it in or out, but we're building the new wall out in front of all that. So that's what's happened. That's what's creating the depth there.
So the rendering makes it appear, at least in my eyes, that they're big, large panels of glass. Are they going to be broken up at all? If it's something a little bit more traditional?
Let's look at that. Let's look at the elevation there. Go back to whatever that front elevation is going to be. Yeah, that we had shown this is from the perspective. Let's go look at the front elevation.
Yeah, the elevation.
Hardline, yeah.
There you go.
So this shows what's being proposed there. So essentially, we're replacing keeping the verticality of that. It's not a piece of half-inch Herculite glass. We're going to keep the traditional, you know, look of the building the best we can. Plus, it's probably the most cost-effective solution as well. We'll come back to you with a section. We'll have a wall section on that when we get to that level. We're just essentially infilling the existing opening with new glazing to match all the glazing around the rest of the building.
I guess my question had to do with whether or not you felt like the design character was consistent with the more traditional edge that you're trying to apply to this more modern building, if you will. And I don't know, it seems like there's something that could be developed design-wise that would sort of add to the more traditional aspect of it. But because what I'm seeing is it looks like big vertical panes of glass. And so that was just a question I had.
We could study that a little bit. I mean, I think the mullions and the Muntins, I mean, certainly we're not looking at adding, you know, a series of, it's sort of a storefront glazing situation in that whole area. So we're not adding, you know, traditional Muntins to that glazing system, but we're trying to do something that reflects I think proportionally what you might find there in a more traditional situation. If that was like I said, a piece of solid Herculite glass with no glazing or no mullions, that probably might be a little bit much. But you know, I think what we're proposing seems to fit well. You know, you look at the proportionality of that, and with the doors to the side, so it kind of mimics that proportion.
I see.
So,
okay, thank you.
So, Mr. Holliday, that brings up a question. So you are replacing all of the storefronts and glazing and doors, correct?
That's correct.
Would it, just a question, why would you choose a clear anodized rather than a dark bronze to mimic or to coordinate with your metal? I'm assuming your metal columns and beams on your walkways in the back are a dark color. Would not this be a stronger? Well, why? And your color board suggests a dark aluminum. Why do you with the clear anodized?
Right. Vice Chair Six and members of the board, what we are trying to do is get the appropriate balance for this building, which is, I think, what we showed you last time was it was very much a modernist box. And the tenants for this building, hopefully they're going to actually be taking over the front facility is what they hope to do, is an art gallery. So we're trying to keep a bit of a crisp contemporary edge without, you know, crossing the invisible line as the last scheme apparently did. So this is why we can look at the mullion color, but I think if we can go look actually at the color materials board is probably a good place to look at that. Everything would start to be the darker. You know, I'm concerned that we would just, it might be too much with if everything became the dark, you know, anodized bronze. So you know, this is what we're proposing at this point in time. Also, the light fixtures are they're a rust colored metal finish. So we've tried to integrate materiality where we can. But if the window mullions become that darker color, that means everything is way down in that, you know, almost like a flat black color. And I think you'd lose some of the crispness of the darker lines against the lighter, you know, window elements. It's probably more appropriate when you look at the color. Maybe we can go back and just look at that west elevation, because that's all of those windows right now are the clear finished anodized aluminum. There you go. So if everything went dark, we're sort of concerned that it would lose a little bit of the crispness that is sort of the one thing that's kind of working for that building right now. But it's clearly not a traditional building. I mean, we're not adding, you know, so we're trying to strike the right balance.
All right, very good, thank you. So does any other members of the board have questions? All right, so with that, we'll go to comment. Oh, sorry, Board Member Whelan, I didn't see your hand raised. Go ahead.
I don't have questions, Vice Chair Six. I'm ready to make comments. I appreciate the design changes that the proponent has made, especially regarding the integrated bollards. I think that's a very good solution, and tying it more to the tradition of Santa Barbara architecture, along with the plastered wall. I might suggest that they, the plastered planter wall, that is, I might strongly suggest that they consider adding skate stop until the plant material achieves that wonderful lush image that is portrayed. I can support this as a preliminary design proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes. So each of Mr. Holliday's proposals, I think we have made suggestions and to gently move this to a place where it seems to me like he has arrived at that. It is, I think, for me, not as an architect, I perhaps give a little more reverence to the architect's design and choices here. And I think that I respect those when he talks about the anodized metal and the windows mullions. I think those are important points that his choice here should have some precedence. So I think this is ready to move on, and I'm anxious to see it actually for us to approve this for design approval.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Anybody else? Your body language seems to say you want to speak. If there's no other comments, I'll make my comments. I think thoroughly appreciate patience that the applicant has shown in coming to what I think is a very successful balance. He speaks of crossing the line. I think that this is acceptable in a place wherever the line is drawn. Successful with his desire to have the contemporary mix with acknowledgement and of the context, of the predominant context of the neighborhood. So I have no problem with what I see here. As per my questions that I'm disappointed that we can't have a significant tree Parkway, and I would hope that you could start a small tree or vertical shrubbery, somehow changing the very back end planter as it returns the corner to bring some substantial height of vegetation that doesn't get in the way of rubbing the building or the patio. I would suggest that, and I appreciate. Again, I have no problem with the clear anodized. I understand what the desire here is, and look forward to seeing this at final.
Vice
with
Chair
that-
Six. Oh.
Yes, Ms. Anderson.
I just wanted to say that I've been able to catch up on all the meeting minutes, and so that I can actually participate in the vote this time.
Okay, appreciate that.
I'm ready to make a motion.
All right, Mr. Olson.
I move that we approve the project for design approval. And I'm open here to conditions. If any of the commissioners want to add a condition to this, I'm open to that. And I'll hold this open for a second or two to see if there are before I proceed. So if there aren't, sorry.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
I would like a condition that we are interested in seeing at least the signature front light fixture, a more traditional fixture than what's on the what's on the material board. And I don't know whether anybody else supports this idea, but the suggestion to study study the configuration of the low planter at the laundry patio to wider at the back and introduce some more significant height of planting. I don't know whether we need to vote on that. If anybody else would support those two conditions, I'd appreciate knowing.
Yes.
I would support the first one, but not the second one.
Okay. Do we want to take a straw vote on the second one?
Sure.
Now, who is in support of conditioning Mr. Olson's motion with the caveat of studying more significant heights to some area on the front patio raised planter?
All right, we have Vice Chair Six,
Yes.
Board Member Anderson,
No.
Board Member Black,
I'd say no.
Board Member Olson,
No.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
All right, very good. All right, so I think that before you read this, I wonder from staff how our PDA approval and no, of course, no final approval if we're meeting the streamlining 2-week criteria.
Thank you, Vice Chair Six. Yes, project design approval is considered an appealable action. And so you would be meeting the Permit Streamlining Act requirements for this project.
So do we have to rush does the applicant need to rush back with his final approval?
No, not at this point. The Permit Streamlining Act says once the project is determined complete, Then the design boards, we have 60 days to have an appealable action. So the project design approval is considered the appealable action. So that part of the Permit Streamlining Act is done. So from there on, it's up to the applicants of when they would want to come back. They have the opportunity to come back for in-progress reviews. And of course, that's optional, but final approval is not. So they still do need to come back for final approval. And that's at their own discretion. Well, within the 3-year approval that you will be granting with the project design approval.
Thank you, Ms. McGuire. Sorry to interrupt, Mr. Olson, your completion of your motion. So please continue.
The project complies with city charter and municipal code. And it's consistent with the design guidelines. The project is compatible with the architectural character of the city and of this particular neighborhood. It is of appropriate size, mass, bulk, height, and scale. And it's sensitive to adjacent landmarks and historic resources of which we are not aware of any. The public views of the ocean and mountains are not obscured, and the use of open space and landscaping is appropriate.
All right, do we have a second on that motion?
I'll second that.
Thank you, Mr. William. We now have a motion on, so if we could take a vote.
Could we have it read, please?
Oh,
Yes, so the motion is for project design approval with the following comments. Number 1, the board would like to see at least the signature front lighting fixture to be a more traditional style than what's proposed. And number 2, the project compatibility analysis criteria have generally been met with comment.
Mr. Olson, if we could add a motion that this, if it's accept applicant an indefinite continuance to full board?
Yes. And a second?
Who has seconded this? I lost my
Mr.
train.
Whalen, I believe.
I did.
And do?
And
We
do.
just revised the motion, how technically, but we did. So you're, as seconder, you support the revision.
I do and did and will.
Thank you. All right, so we have a motion on the screen. Mary?
Thank you. We have Vice Chair Six,
Aye.
Board Member Anderson,
Yes.
Board Member Block,
Yes.
Board Member Olson,
Yes.
and Board Member Whalen.
Yes.
All right, the motion carries. Thank you.
All right, with that, that concludes our business for March 8th. So I will close the meeting at this time. Thank
Thank
you
you,
all.
Vice Chair Six.
Vice-
Thank you.
Vice- Six, the appeal process needs to be read into the record.
So this appeal, this is the project design approval is an appealable decision. It can be appealed within days of this date. Now, with that, I will close the meeting. Bye all.
Aye.